Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Shri Shri Radha Madhava ki jai. Shri Shri Kishore Kishori ki jai. Shri Shri Gaurnitai ki jai. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Or Bhaktavrinda ki jai. Thank you. That's right. I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatamarandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksurumritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Tarine. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Naveen Krishna Guru, for giving me a chance to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you, all of you, for being here to listen. So, we're reading today from the 10th canto, chapter 60, text 46. This is the chapter of Krishna teasing Rukmini. It's a very sweet chapter because ordinarily when we think of God, we think of somebody who's very serious, powerful, very busy. He's in charge of all aspects of existence. But here we're getting a glimpse into God's personal life, how he behaves with his intimate associates, his intimate devotees, like his wife, Rukmini. Sometimes he teases her because he wants to see how she'll react. He wants to test her love. So it's a very sweet exchange. And Srila Prabhupada will comment on this sweet dealing between Krishna and his devotees in his purport. We'll chant the Sanskrit. Please repeat after me. Astvam bhujakshamamate charananuraga Astvam bhujakshamamate charananuraga Atman ratasya mayi chanatirikta drishte Atman ratasya mayi chanatirikta drishte Yarhyasya vridhaya upatara jyoti matro Yarhyasya vridhaya upatara jyoti matro Mam ikshase taduhana paramanukampa Mam ikshase taduhana paramanukampa. Would anyone like to chant it? Astvam bhujakshamamate charunanuraga Atman ratasya mayi chanatarikta drishte Yarhyasya vridhaya upatara jyoti matro Mam ikshase taruhana paramanukampa. Astvam bhujakshamamate charananuraga Atman ratasya mayi chanatirikta drishte. Yarhyasya vridhaya upatam vrajobhi matro. Mam ikshase taruhana paramanukampa. Anyone else? Astvak ambujakshamamate charunanuraga. Atman ratasya mayi chanatirikta drishte. Yarhyasya vridhaya upatara jyoti matro. Mam ikshase taruhana paramanukampa. We'll chant the word for word meanings. Astu, may there be. Ambuja aksha, O lotus-eyed one. Mama, my, te, your, charana, for the feet, anuraga, steady attraction, atman, in yourself, ratasya, who take your pleasure, mai, toward me, cha, and, anatirikta, not much, drishte, whose glance, yarhi, when, asya, of this universe, vridhaye, for the increase, upata, assuming, raja, of the mode of passion, ati matra, an abundance, mam, at me, ikshase, you look, tat, that, uha, indeed, na, for us, parama, the greatest, anukampa, show of mercy. Translation. O lotus-eyed one, though you are satisfied within yourself and thus rarely turn your attention toward me, please bless me with steady love for your feet. It is when you assume a predominance of passion in order to manifest the universe that you glance upon me, showing me what is indeed your greatest mercy. So this is spoken by Rukmini to Krishna. Purport. In text 20 of this chapter, Lord Krishna stated, always satisfied within ourselves, we care nothing for wives, children, and wealth. Here Rukmini Devi humbly replies, yes, you take pleasure within yourself and therefore rarely look at me. So this verse that we're reading today is Rukmini's response to this statement of Krishna regarding his detachment from family life and children. She's saying, yes, you're satisfied within yourself and you rarely look at me. So please bless me that I can love you, even in spite of your indifference. And then, taking the mood of Krishna's external potency, which is her expansion, she says, it is when you assume a predominance of passion in order to manifest the universe that you glance upon me, showing me what is indeed your greatest mercy. We'll continue with the purport. In this regard, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti points out that Lord Krishna has already declared his love for Rukmini in Bhagavatam 10:53-2. Tataham api tatchito nidram cha na labhe nishi. I am also thinking about her so much that I cannot sleep at night. So this verse Krishna spoke when he was presented with the letter from Rukmini, from the Brahmin messenger. She had been arranged to marry Shishupal by her brother Rukmi. but she was not interested in Shishupal because she had heard the glories of Krishna from a young age from the brahmanas in the palace of her father. And hearing the glories of Krishna, she had become very attracted to him. She developed love for him. Of course, she's Krishna's eternal associate. Rukmini always lives in the transcendental realm, in the spiritual world, with Krishna as the Lakshmi Devi of Dwarka. But in the course of her pastimes on earth, she heard his glories, developed love for him, became attached to him, and couldn't think of marrying anyone else. When the demigods churned the ocean of milk along with the demons, Lakshmi Devi came out, and it's described that she looked around for her husband, because it's the natural tendency of the living entity to take shelter. As jivas, we're called tatastha shakti. That means we have to either take shelter of the external potency or the internal potency, but we're not independent. We're always in a state of dependence. So this is true for all jivas. And in the material plane, it's especially true for people in female form. So Lakshmi Devi, she's emerged from the ocean of milk and she's looking, where is my husband? Where can I take shelter? Who can protect me? And she looks and she doesn't see anybody. She sees many strong, powerful demigods, Indra, Shiva, Brahma, very intelligent people. But it's only when she sees Vishnu that she realizes, this is my husband. I can't take shelter of anyone else. So Rukmini Devi had this same mood. How can I accept as my husband anyone but the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna? This is a dignified stance. A person of dignity understands that when there's something of value, why should I accept something of lesser value? It's beneath me to accept something of lesser value. I know my worth. Therefore, why should I accept something of so little value when I can have something of greater value? That's a dignified person. So Rukmini Devi is setting this good example for all of us that we should only accept Krishna as our protector and maintainer. We shouldn't accept anyone else, because no one else can actually give us shelter. And also, that's our worth as a living entity, as a jiva. Krishna says, Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke. We all belong to Krishna. We're his property. So we shouldn't try to take shelter of any other master, any other lord than Krishna. So Rukmini sent a Brahmin messenger all the way to Dwarka, to Krishna's kingdom. And Krishna received the messenger and he spoke this verse. He said, I'm also thinking about Rukmini. I can't even sleep at night. So this seems to contradict what he had said earlier in this chapter, where he said that I'm not interested in family life. I don't think about my children, my wives. I'm self-satisfied. So based on this, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives an alternate interpretation. He gives two interpretations for this verse, and the disciples of Srila Prabhupada have explained that in the remainder of the purport. So we'll continue. They write, Lord Krishna is satisfied within himself. And if we remember that Srimati Rukmini Devi is his internal potency, we can understand that his loving affairs with her are expressions of his pure spiritual happiness. So it's in this sense that Krishna is self-satisfied. It doesn't mean that he doesn't do anything. It doesn't mean he doesn't have any other relationships. It means that Krishna takes pleasure from the relationships with those who are part of his antaranga shakti, his internal potency. Srila Prabhupada would often quote this verse from the Svetashrita Upanishad. Parasya shaktir vividhaiva shriyate svabhaviki jnana bala kriya cha. That Krishna's energies are diverse and unlimitedly variegated. They give pleasure to Krishna in all different ways. So when we say Krishna is Atma Rama, it doesn't mean that he doesn't do anything, he doesn't feel anything, he doesn't think anything. It means that he's taking pleasure, Rama, from those energies which are non-different from his very self, his Atma. This is his internal potency, his Hladini Shakti. And Rukmini Devi is an expansion of the original Hladini Shakti, Radharani. So in that sense, Krishna is Atma Rama. He's taking shelter. He's taking pleasure only in himself. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is saying that an indirect meaning of this verse is an indirect statement is that Rukmini is just apparently identifying with the external energy, but actually she's saying, because you have already said, you've already confessed that you think about me day and night, therefore you must take pleasure in me, therefore I must be your internal potency, because you don't take pleasure from your external potency directly. Then the devotees continue with the other interpretation, which is the straight reading of what she's saying here. Here, however, Queen Rukmini humbly identifies herself with the Lord's external energy, which is her expansion. Therefore, she says, though you do not often look at me, when you are ready to manifest the material universe and thus begin to work through the material quality of passion, which is your potency, you glance at me. In this way, you show me your greatest mercy. Thus, Acharya Vishwanath explains that Goddess Rukmini's statement can be understood in two ways. And of course, the Vaishnavas, after thoroughly understanding the philosophy of Krishna from the bona fide Acharyas, simply relish these loving affairs between the Lord and his exalted devotees. Hare Krishna. So those are the two interpretations of this verse. Rukmini's either somewhat teasing Krishna by externally identifying as his Maya potency, when internally she's hinting, acknowledging that he does take pleasure in her. He's already confessed, and she can tell. Or she's identifying as Krishna's external potency. And then this last sentence is the sentence I wanted to focus on for the most part today, that the Vaishnavas, after thoroughly understanding the philosophy of Krishna from the bona fide acharyas, simply relish these loving affairs between the Lord and his exalted devotees. So, as we know, there's 3 different stages of bhakti, broad stages: Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama. And for each devotee on each platform, the Srimad Bhagavatam plays a different role. But for each devotee, it's very, very important that they have a relationship with Srimad Bhagavatam. So for the neophyte devotee, the beginner, the Kanishta, our acharyas describe their faith is komala, or pliable, very soft. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Chaitanya Charitamrita has compared bhakti to like a creeper growing. And when a creeper is just growing, earlier this spring, my wife and our kids planted some little seeds, marigold seeds, and other types of seeds. And when you see it just sprout, it's so fragile. If you just poke it, it could die. If you disturb the root system, then it could die you just poke it a little bit. So similarly, when devotees are just beginning, they need shelter of loving relationships with other Vaishnavas that they trust, who can give them encouragement, nourishment in the form of hearing and chanting with them and giving them service, and helping create an environment where they're protected from disturbing elements like devotees who might discourage them, or non-devotees who might discourage them, or other types of experiences that could disturb their faith in different ways. And also, they need to have examples of devotees in their lives that can help them be inspired to develop a relationship with Srimad Bhagavatam and the Shastra. Because Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains that what determines a devotee's advancement in Krishna consciousness is the degree of their faith. And faith and knowledge of scripture are intimately interrelated. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, Shraddhavan jana hoy bhakti adhikari uttama madhyama kanishta shraddha anusari. So it's in accordance with their faith. Shraddha. But faith for Gaudiya Vaishnavas isn't just blind dogma that I profess. I grew up a Catholic, so we had a profession of faith that I believe Jesus Christ is the Son of God and He died on the cross and was risen. It's a profession, and it's a good start for conditioned souls to have some kind of to have some kind of belief in God. But for Vaishnavas, faith isn't just a dogma. It's not just something you believe. You say that you think like this, I have this opinion, I have that opinion. Faith is called Shastriya Shraddha. This means faith must be grounded in scriptural knowledge. Why do we believe Krishna is God? Not just because my guru says, but because we know Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartante iti ma bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. That I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything comes from me. Krishna says himself. And who is more authoritative than Krishna? So our faith has to be grounded in Shastric knowledge. Otherwise, when somebody presents some argument, or when our own mind presents some argument, why am I bothering with all this chanting, living such a regulated, austere life? Why can't I go to the bars? Why can't I have as much sex with my wife as I want? Why can't I have sex with different people's wives? People are doing that. Why should I live such an austere, restricted life? We need to know from Shastra why we're doing these things, so that if somebody challenges us or our mind becomes attracted to some other mode of life, then we can remember from based on Shastra and bring ourselves back on the proper course. And in this way, one becomes a Madhyama Bhakta, an intermediate devotee who's fixed, they're nishta, they're steady. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami defines them as an intermediate devotee, as Dridha Shraddhavan. This means their faith is firm and their faith is fixed. And the reason why we're discussing these different stages is because Srila Prabhupada's disciples have very astutely pointed out that in the beginning, we just have to develop understanding of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. So these types of discussions between Krishna and Rukmini are relishable for advanced devotees. They can appreciate the rasa that's being exchanged. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Rupa Goswami analyzes in great detail the different types of rasa in bhakti, the different mellows of love Krishna exchanges with his devotees. And one can analyze in minute detail the types of exchanges that are being relished between Krishna and his devotees. But in the beginning, we just have to develop a basic philosophical understanding, so that one day we can hope to relish such exchanges. For conditioned souls, one of the most relishable things in material life is gossip. Gossip is very juicy. They say, what's the juice? What's he doing? What's she doing? Because the human community is filled with different dramatic elements, different perverted reflections of the original spiritual rasas, the original spiritual emotions. In the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada discusses the 5 main rasas: neutrality or shanta, servitorship, dasya, friendship, sakya, parental affection, vatsalya, and conjugal love, madhurya. And there's also 7 subordinate or secondary rasas, such as laughter or comedy, hasya, chivalry, mercy, etc. Fear, horror, ghastliness. So all of these different rasas are found in this material world in a perverted reflection. For example, there's horror movies. Has anyone seen a horror movie before? When I was younger, it was a thing. Me and my friends, we would go. But we only went for one reason. At least this is my theory. Is because the boys and the girls would like to go and sit together so that when it was a frightening part, the girls would cling very tightly to the boys. So it's a combination of fear and some romantic rasa. Perverted reflection. It's a perverted reflection. So it's actually not fulfilling or satisfying for the soul, but you can see that the living entity is seeking rasa. We need some emotional content in our life. We need some pleasure. Krishna is raso vaisaha, and we're his parts and parcels. We also need rasa. We need pleasure. But if we're not getting that rasa in Srimad Bhagavatam, then we'll get it in other mediums, like movies or TV shows or gossip. So we have to first develop a philosophical understanding, which is known as Sambandha Gyan. And when the neophyte devotee, the beginner devotee, develops this Sambandha Gyan, then they cease trying to enjoy the material rasas of this world. Because they recognize, I'm spirit, this is matter. There's nothing enjoyable for me here. I'm like a fish and I belong in the water of the spiritual world. This is all desert. This material world is a desert. There's no water for me here, no pleasure for me here. But it requires much hearing, and it also requires mercy. Krishnadas Kaviraj says, Madhyama Adhikari se Mahabhagyavan. He's extremely fortunate. This is interesting that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the definition of Madhyam Adhikari, this word Mahabhagyavan is there. Very fortunate person. And that fortune, that great fortune, refers to the association of devotees and the mercy of devotees. Vishnu Chakri Thakur explains that the devotees are Krishna's mercy agents. Like if you have a special product, some companies, you go to their website, you can't actually purchase anything directly from them. They say, you have to see our authorized distributors. You've seen that? You know, like maybe a special type of water filter. You go to type it in on Google, you go to their website, and you can't even buy it. They don't have a shop online. They say, visit one of our authorized distributors. So we might pray, Krishna, Krishna, give me mercy. Give me mercy. Please engage me in your service. Please give me love for you. And he says, you have to visit one of my authorized distributors. Go find one of my Vaishnava devotees. They'll give you mercy. They'll give you shelter. They'll give you service. So a Madhyam Bhakta, he understands that the Vaishnavas are my shelter. The Vaishnavas are my well-wishers in this world. And the intermediate devotee knows how to interact with different types of Vaishnava devotees. So in the Bhagavatam, the intermediate devotee is defined as follows. Ishvare tad adhineshu balisheshu dvisatchucha prema maitri kripopeksha yakroti samadhyama. This is 4 types of groups that the intermediate devotee is interacting with. He's giving love to the Supreme Lord. He's making friendship with devotees. He's giving mercy to the innocent. And he's neglecting the envious or the non-devotees. So this discrimination is a key part of being an intermediate devotee. Because a junior devotee, a beginner, can't really recognize who's a devotee, who's not a devotee. Who's advanced, who's not advanced. And so they inevitably commit mistakes and they make offenses to the advanced devotees. They mistake an advanced devotee for a non-devotee or a not very advanced devotee. They say, oh, this person, he has thousands of disciples. He just wants name and fame and followers. He's not very advanced. Therefore, they blaspheme great devotees. Or they say, oh, this person, he just wears a kopin and he has a big beard. He must be very advanced. So in this way, they don't have proper basis for making discrimination amongst different types of devotees. Because they don't have shastric knowledge. They haven't read the Bhagavatam. They're not familiar with description of bhakti, the symptoms of a Vaishnava, by which they can actually ascertain who is in what type of position. So we have to hear and hear and hear and develop a relationship with Srimad Bhagavatam and really sincerely try to serve the devotees and love the devotees and let go of whatever anarthas we may be holding on to that are impeding our ability to develop loving relationships with the devotees. And in this way we can become Mahabhagyavan, very fortunate, and Krishna's devotees will bless us with Bhagavad Nishta, steadiness in our practices, and the ability to remain aloof from the various waves that come and go in material existence, and remain disinterested in the various mundane mellows that are constantly being presented to us in the form of worldly media and prajalpa and so on. And then we become more and more interested in Srimad Bhagavatam and more interested in hearing and chanting with devotees. And we find so much satisfaction in that. So the third verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam is an instruction specifically for the most advanced devotees. Nigama kalpataror galitam palam shikamukad amrita drava samyutam pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam mur aho rasika bhori bhavuka. And I think that, this is my speculation, but I think that the devotees, when they were writing this purport, they had this verse in mind. Because they write that after thoroughly understanding the philosophy of Krishna from the bona fide acharyas, the Vaishnavas simply relish these loving affairs between the Lord and his exalted devotees. Because this is the purport of this third verse of the Bhagavatam, that the whole purpose of our lives is to relish Krishna's loving exchanges with his devotees. This Bhagavad Rasa, this Bhakti Rasa. That's the goal of our life, is to relish these transcendental exchanges. Because we need rasa, we need pleasure, we need some emotional content in our life. And if we're not getting it from Srimad Bhagavatam, if we're not getting it from our chanting of the holy name, from our service to the Vaishnavas, then we are forced to seek it through mundane sources. And we won't be fulfilled. And we may even endanger our bhakti. So, taking our study of Shastra very seriously is the best thing that we can do for ourselves and also for others that we may wish to help in their Krishna consciousness. So, in summary, the beginner devotee, their relationship with Srimad Bhagavatam is meant to help them develop Sambandha Gyan, knowledge of Krishna, his energies, knowledge that I am a servant of Krishna, how I am a servant of Krishna, what are the various obstacles on the path of bhakti. For instance, the Bhagavatam is filled with many examples of positive role models, like Dhruva, Prahlad, and so on, as well as negative role models, Daksha, Indra, etc. So we can learn from both types. Then the intermediate devotee, although he has faith in Shastra, it's described that he doesn't have as thorough knowledge of Shastra as the most advanced devotees. So it's important that the intermediate devotee develops a relationship with Srimad Bhagavatam for the purpose of enhancing their capacity to preach. Because if a person under your care has questions and you can't answer them based on Shastra, then it will be it won't be very good for their faith. Here's somebody who's practicing 10, 20 years and you say, what about this? Geez, I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. Now I have doubts. We need to be able to answer people's questions based on scripture. And then the most advanced devotee, they are relishing Shastra. And in their association, the younger devotees, or the, let's say, less advanced devotees, they get a glimpse of what it means to actually taste rasa. Because the mellows that the advanced devotees are relishing reflect into the heart of the junior devotees. This is called an abhas, or a glimmer, a shadow of bhava, which is described in Nectar of Devotion or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. That in the presence of advanced souls, the junior devotees get a taste. Wow, this Krishna consciousness is amazing. And it bolsters their faith until they're able to directly connect with Krishna in the form of his holy name and directly connect with the Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna. We'll conclude there. If there's any comments or questions, that would be very wonderful. Any reflections also is very wonderful. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you so much for the nice class. I really appreciate. I just wanted to ask this question. Like you mentioned, like different devotees have different rasas. Like they are in the material world. The one rasa is gossip. They take shelter of their gossip rasa. So yeah, it is natural that we need some rasa for every living entity. But at the same time, we should take shelter of higher rasa, as you mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Like we should take how to develop that rasa. Instead of we know that as a condition. So, like, if my personal question, I know that it's a condition, like interested in the rasa of the material world, but how to convert that and make strengthen rasa hearing and reading Srimad Bhagavatam, so that rasa, instead of getting lower taste, getting higher taste, how to shift that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is any solution?
Yeah, so Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Instruction says that there are 6 things which nourish bhakti: enthusiasm, confidence, patience, and then he says tat tat karma pravartanat, which means engaging in all the various activities of devotional service. That you actually have to do the bhakti in order to get a taste for it. Just like if you want to become addicted to smoking cigarettes, you should go get started smoking. Smoke lots every day, and then eventually you'll become addicted, because nicotine is a naturally addictive substance. And you should associate with also other smokers, and then you'll become addicted to smoking cigarettes. So same with bhakti. If you want to become addicted to Krishna, then you should associate with others who are serious about their spiritual practice, and you should every day try to fill up your day with as much bhakti as possible. So you should have some strict sadhana, just like you're doing the regular pujas and you're hearing Bhagavatam, doing your japa. All these things are essential, and we should take them very seriously every day. We have to be careful not to become monotonous in our practice, just going through the ritual, going through the motion, that okay, now it's time to chant Hare Krishna, and the mind is going to all these different things, and I'm just externally going through the motions of my spiritual practice. That's not helpful. We'll spend many, many lifetimes. Actually, Chaitanya Charitamrita says one can spend millions of lifetimes going through the motions of bhakti, but they'll never get prema, because one has to give up all offenses to the holy name. And the 10th offense is to be inattentive while chanting. And that applies to any anga of bhakti. We should be absorbed in our bhakti. That's why preaching is said to be one of the most powerful angas of bhakti for the practitioner, the most purifying. Because when you're speaking, you're forced to be attentive. It's very difficult to think of so many other things when I'm speaking to somebody. Like right now, I'm very focused on answering your question as best as I can. I'm not thinking about my children. I'm not thinking about my wife. When I'm chanting japa, it's more easy to think about my wife, my children, my job, etc. But when I'm preaching, it's very difficult to have a split mind. So preaching is very powerful. sadhana. So we should practice, we should preach, and we should associate with devotees. Satovrite, we should find some devotees that we can take inspiration from, follow in their footsteps, have a relationship with them. And in any community of practitioners, whether on a global level or a local level, there will be people who are on all the different angas of, not angas, but levels of bhakti. There will be devotees who are more advanced and devotees who are less advanced. So aspiring to be a madhyama, we should try to associate with and serve those who are more advanced than us. And we should show mercy to those who are less advanced. And if people don't, they're not interested in, they want to talk gossip with us or whatever, we can just very respectfully avoid such conversations. For instance, we can say, "Oh, I'm not so interested in talking about that," or just change the subject. Say, "Oh, did you know when Dhruva Maharaj went to the forest? He was only 5 years old. Isn't that amazing?" Something, whatever you're reading, just change the subject. And as many times as it takes, because whatever goes into the ear, it enters the heart. So we have to be very careful to protect our ears from mundane and caustic sound vibration. Caustic means like corrosive, like a something it will destroy. It will destroy whatever it touches. And at the same time, we have to be careful not to judge or criticize others, because it's natural that devotees are on different levels, and we also have gone through our phase of gossiping. My whole life I've been interested in that. So if others are interested, why should I fault them for that? The best thing we can do is try to practice ourselves at a high standard and set a good example for others, and not find fault and not criticize. Because what happens when we criticize is we're actually becoming distracted from Krishna. You can't be focused on other people's maya and be thinking of Krishna at the same time. Krishna is compared to the sun. Maya is compared to darkness. So if you're seeing maya, it means you're not seeing Krishna. So we should see that the devotees, even if they're practicing some at a lower standard, we should see the positive qualities. We should appreciate whatever bhakti is there. Like a homeless man one time at 26 2nd Avenue, Srila Prabhupada was giving class, and one homeless man came in with a toilet paper roll, and donated it, and then walked away. So a junior devotee might think, "Oh, what a conditioned soul. He had an opportunity to hear class from a Paramahamsa, Srila Prabhupada, and he just walked out. What a fool." But Prabhupada saw, wow, his devotional life has begun. He's donated toilet paper. So every devotee who comes into this temple is glorious. They're doing something for Krishna. Even if it's just showing up to take darshan. Even if it's just showing up to take prasadam. That's glorious. How many millions of people in their whole life they don't even take one spoonful of prasadam? And here's people who have so much attraction to taking prasadam that every day they look forward, I can't wait till I go to the temple so I can take Krishna prasadam. That's glorious. So what if they're gossiping while they're taking prasadam? At least they're taking prasadam. But we should hold ourselves to a higher standard. Does that make sense?
Thank you so much, bro. Very nice answer. Really appreciate.
Let me say one more thing about that. So in the teachings of Kapila he says, let's see, I have it written down. Here. Yomam sarveshu bhuteshu santam atmanam ishvaram hitvaracham bhajate maudyat basmanyeva juhoti sa. That a person who worships the temple deity but is disrespectful to the other living entities by finding fault with them or not showing proper respect to them, by recognizing that the super soul is in the heart of everyone, for such a person, his worship is like pouring ghee onto ashes. Right? So if you see the super soul in the heart of everyone, you can't find fault with them. You can't criticize, because whatever they're doing is authorized by the Lord. You may recognize this is not an activity I want to engage in. But who am I to judge and criticize that person? You know? It's like a kindergartner, my children, they're learning how to write. So my son, you know, he just scribbles and then he shows the picture. Look, I guess this is terrible. What is this scribble? You know? But I don't say that because he's only 3 years old. I say, this is wonderful. This is very good. So in the same way, we have to see the everything has to be seen according to where a person, what is their level of practice, you know. So this is begins the ability to discern these things begins at the level of madhyama adhikari. That you're able to appreciate devotees regardless of their level of advancement, regardless of whatever anarthas may remain, you appreciate the bhakti. And you just overlook the anarthas because the anarthas will inevitably be cleansed in the process of bhakti automatically. And for yourself, you focus on making advancement by strong sadhana, preaching, and associating with like-minded and advanced devotees. And just don't get entangled, don't get involved in other things, don't get distracted. Hare Krishna. Krishna says, wherever the mind wanders, simply keep bringing it back. So it takes practice, you know, because there'll be so many opportunities for distraction. We just have to keep bringing the mind back. Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu. Any other last questions? Yeah.
Thank you for your class. So you just mentioned about Dhruv Maharaj, and like he was guided by Narad ji for his because of the problem that his father had basically pushed him away from his own house. So if we do like we say that we should concentrate on our own bhakti and our own spiritual upliftment, but if we do not empathize with other people's problems, then mercy is often denied to people who need it the most. Like we'll say, oh, this person is like half crazy, so just let's get away from this person, because but the person is here because he needs the mercy most of all. So Dhruv Maharaj wouldn't have become Dhruv Maharaj had not Narad Muni guided him and told him how to pursue the spiritual path. And he would have been just lost into victimhood or something like that had not Narad Muni known that he needs that special mercy, because he was not even a neophyte devotee. So if he would have just talked about how he is a victim of circumstances, had he not helped him out of it, so anybody who will come and you will say, oh, he is just like so negative or whatnot, so it's bad for my spiritual upliftment, but in that process we are denying mercy to somebody who needs it the most.
This is a
So
very nice observation. Thank you. Thank you for that, sharing that. So in the definition of Madhyama devotee, which we just described, the fourth element is to disregard the envious. The third is to give mercy to the innocent. And the fourth is to disregard the envious. So Dhruva was not an envious person. He was an innocent person. He was seeking Krishna. So Narada Muni saw this little boy is seeking the Supreme Lord. Even he has a material motive, but he's looking for the right person. He's looking for Vishnu. So let me try to help him find Vishnu. And he gave instructions. And Dhruva followed those instructions. An envious person, they're not looking for Krishna. They're looking for trouble. They're trying to cause problems. You give them instructions, they don't follow the instructions. So these are some ways we can distinguish between the two types. And it is very important to avoid people who are envious. We shouldn't try to instruct everyone. In fact, we practically shouldn't try to instruct anyone. We all have a tendency to instruct others. We should instruct our own mind, instruct our own self until we come to a pure standard. How can I honestly be concerned about other people's lack of Krishna consciousness when I myself am lacking complete Krishna consciousness? This is hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is very difficult to uproot 100%. It takes a long time. It takes a very long time. It's not until practically the stage of bhava bhakti, when the Lord's internal potency, his samvit shakti and his hladini shakti enters into the heart, that the living entity is mostly or 100% free of hypocrisy. Until then, there's still some mundane thinking, feeling, and willing going on inside. So we should be very concerned about our own spiritual advancement, and at the same time, as part of our service to Guru and Krishna, and out of our own compassion for the living entities, we should try to help them as much as we're capable and as much as they're receptive. Narada Muni wasn't just a new bhakta. Narada Muni had heard directly from Brahmaji, his father, all of the Srimad Bhagavatam, all of the essential teachings of the Vedas, he had already heard and assimilated. Therefore, he was capable to act as a guru for Dhruva Maharaj. First, we have to do the work of hearing and serving the spiritual masters and doing our own sadhana. And then we can go and instruct others. And then we'll look at the result. Dhruva was very receptive because he saw this is a worthy teacher. So if people aren't receptive to us, we shouldn't take it like there's something wrong with them. We should just continue to work on ourselves. Thank you for that nice observation. Hare Krishna. Mother, did you also want to say something?
In making that distinction between the neophyte devotee and the Madhyamadikari, and the obvious distinction being that the Madhyamadikari can make distinctions. So in the regular world of neophyte devotees, there's naturally entities seen according to their own particular reality with their own insular focus. So, the question would be how, with those insular focuses of numerous neophyte devotees, what smooths out the inevitable, clashing that happens.
Yeah. Even in Srila Prabhupada's time, when he was directly on the planet, even sometimes he'd be directly in the same location, and there would be this conflict. And Srila Prabhupada always attributed it to personalism, because there's individuality, there will be some disagreement, some conflict. But he gave an analogy how to reconcile all conflicts, which is if you drop pebbles in so many different places in a lake, then the ripples will collide and interfere. But if you drop them in the same place, then there will be harmony. So there has to be some common mission that can transcend conflict, that's more important than the petty differences between people. We may disagree about what color of dress to put on Radha and Krishna, but at least we agree that some dress should be there, that the movement somehow should go on. So if we can all accept that somehow or other this Hare Krishna movement has to go on, and I want to be a part of it, then we'll find a way to reconcile the differences which are less important than the all-important mission of preaching and making advancement ourselves. What happens is devotees, unfortunately, lose sight of this central common purpose, that we're all servants of Krishna and we're all trying to assist Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas, and instead they mistake their own particular causes or opinions or whatever to be more important than that central mission. Like for instance, I'm not participating in a Hare Krishna movement unless everyone wears dhoti kurta. If they wear pants and do kirtan with pants, no, I'm not doing that. Because this is more important than the Hare. For example, these are some types of arguments that devotees may get distracted by. But for those who are, and I'm not saying you would, you're just raising it as a point. And you know, there will be people who aren't able to give up their selfish perspective, like you're saying, they're very insular minded. So what to do with them? Well, you know, if they won't take mercy, maybe avoid them. Because if we can't help them, and their association is not beneficial for us, and our association is not beneficial for them, maybe avoid them for some time. And see where our association is wanted and our service is valued. You know, we need service. So and it also helps if there can be a more advanced person who everyone respects. Like when Srila Prabhupada was on the planet, devotees would disagree, but Prabhupada would say, this is how it's going to be done, you know. So in the modern times, we have the GBC, and they're trying to serve that function with, you know, varying degrees of success. Because faith can't be forced. You know, it's not enough that someone just has an institutional post of authority. Faith is something organic that actually needs to be cultivated through relationships. And so, you know, the only thing we can really control is our own movement in Krishna consciousness. Am I going to keep going towards Krishna somehow or other? Or am I going to get distracted by so many different things going on? And Krishna will put us through many tests, and we just have to keep taking shelter. Like Draupadi is a good example, because she was put through such a terrifying, traumatic circumstance, unthinkable circumstance, and her 5 husbands were right there, and they weren't protecting her. So she was put in this position where she was forced, my only shelter is Krishna. And this is true for all of us, that Krishna is our only real shelter. He's our only real friend. Because all other relationships, you know, they may be taken away from us. This person may have to go there, they might have to do this. So it can be bewildering why things happen the way they happen in this world. My Guru Maharaj likes to quote a certain verse, I can't remember it now. I'll have to look it up and get back to you. But there was some very bewildering incident in the Bhagavatam. Maybe the demigods were particularly bewildered. And it's just such a perfect verse for when we find ourselves in a circumstance where, why is this happening like this? There just seems to be no solution. You know, it's so intractable situation. So, but we just fold our hands and pray to the Lord, please, you know, help me, help us find a way. And somehow or other, then miraculously, you know, something good will come out of it if we can just take that approach. I hope that's helpful. Hare Krishna. Thank you all so much. I'm very happy to be here with you this morning. Please pray for us that we can have smooth travels back to Michigan. We have especially for our children's sake. But they had a good time. I hope they didn't disturb anyone in the temple too much last night or this morning. You can hear them a little bit up there. So thank you for allowing us to be here. Hare Krishna. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Vancha kalpatarubhishcha kripa sindhubhye vacha patitanam pavani bhavaishnave pyo namo.